The 587th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the arms. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play. Stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you guys on a Friday night. We were planning to do the 2000s installment of the What If series, but when kind of talking through how we should go about the basketball facility update that Inside Carolina provided some great intel on from earlier this week, we decided better suited to dedicate a whole episode to that. So we're going to do that tonight. We'll be back on Sunday night for that next edition of the What If series, as we will look to finish that next week, because we are just about 10 days away, 12 days away from ACC tip-off in Charlotte, which means the preseason is here in full earnest, and we got to start getting to the preseason stuff and put a bow on the off-season content. So before we get to the basketball facility update, we'll start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day. We got a legendary football coach, Vince Lombardi, for that pod thought. That thought is, quote, "The quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor," end quote. And there's no doubt that Carolina is seeking excellence on the basketball court this upcoming season. They are led by a man that I do think defines a commitment to excellence and what Hubert Davis wants and demands from his basketball players. That's nothing different than what we've seen from legendary figures like, Dean Smith and Roy Williams. They chose to be excellent in the field of coaching, impact lives in the way that coaching does allow you to, all while winning basketball games at the highest level, competing for championships on near about an annual basis. So that's that pod thought of the day for this edition of the podcast. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get to tonight's order of business. But to do so, I've got to turn it over to Anthony. He is the one that has the On3 subscription, which all of this great information was reported on from Inside Carolina. So he has read all the articles. He has read through what was all reported earlier this week in 3 different pieces that went up on the Inside Carolina website. So we're going to kind of reverse gears. I'm going to let him kind of drive this episode, and I'll be the one reacting to it. So without any further ado, Anthony, take it away, my man.
All right, man. Well, here's the thing. This is the biggest update that we've received when it's come to the Smith Center here in recent memory. This one, I think, really starts to show you just how serious they are about getting a new facility here for the basketball program. And one of the things that really stuck out to me when reading over the article, and I think the most important thing that has to be taken away, is that something has to be done when it comes to the Smith Center, and something has to be done soon. This was from Lee Roberts in a recent interview with Inside Carolina. And it was, people that were asking why Carolina is even considering potential changes to the basketball facility. And he responded by saying, quote, "The answer is that the Smith Center needs a new roof. It doesn't need a new roof 5 years from now. We put buckets out whenever it rains right now, and that's an $80 to $100 million repair bill." So I think people don't realize just how important it is that Carolina gets a new facility here soon. This was that alone right there cost more than the amount of money that it took to originally build the Smith Center, the type of renovations that it needs. So, when it comes to that, I think that shows you that we are in a pretty dire stretch. He also said that one of the things that he is focused on, the fact that the bathrooms and concession stands are terribly outdated. There is a single concourse. That's another thing that we've heard a lot of people talk about when it comes to the renovation of the Smith Center, that there really just isn't enough room for everybody inside of the facility to fit in one concourse. It's way too cramped, and that is definitely something that we have seen when we have gone to games. So, I mean, the thing is now, what do you have to do from a Carolina perspective? Well, we know that there are 6 options for the university to consider. It is the Smith Center renovation, the Smith Center replacement, Bowles parking lot idea, the Odom Village location, Friday Center location, and the Carolina North location. And those are all things that are on the table here. But I do think that the most important thing that we can note is that this is something that needs to happen sooner rather than later. It's not something that's going to drag on because of the issues that they're already dealing with the Smith Center. So we're probably going to get some sort of indication as to what direction they're going in here within the next year or so. Something that I think we thought might take a little bit longer, considering just how special the Smith Center is. But it feels like in Lee Roberts' mind, it's very important to get this done soon.
If we're being truly honest, and I don't disagree with what Bubba did, but this should have been done 10, 15 years ago. But Bubba prioritized updating and upgrading other facilities on campus, whether it was some of the stuff they done to Kenan Stadium. You built brand new soccer, field hockey stadiums, and those are championship caliber programs. They deserve the facility that they now get to call home. And it really just shows you kind of how spoiled Carolina is to have so many state-of-the-art facilities on their campus, whether it's in football, basketball, or in the non-revenue sports. But this now becomes not a want for Carolina to have a new up-to-date state-of-the-art facility. It's now a need. It's just the reality of the situation with where we've gotten. And look, we go to the Smith Center just about every year. We're in there for at least 1 or 2 games, and there's no denying. I mean, it is a basketball haven. It is. It's on the short list of places that, whether you're a college basketball fan or a basketball fan in general, they want to go see a basketball game at the Smith Center, at the Dean Dome, because when it was built in the 80s, it was a marvel. But there's nothing wrong in saying that it is outdated. There are some issues that we now face with just the way that you funnel people in and out of the arena. And so it's time for something new. it's time for something fresh. And I think the challenge has been from the moment that they embarked on this endeavor was, what was the best way to go about this? Is it to renovate what you currently have? Is it to completely rebuild where you're currently established, or make better use of some of the other areas that you own land on, like Carolina North, which is going to be developed, whether it's with a basketball facility or, housing, or business structure of the like. And so that's kind of what I think they're still trying to work their way through. But there's no denying that at this point in time, wanting to upgrade the Smith Center is no longer as big as the need is. This is now a need from the athletic department's status, and it's why I think we will have an answer, maybe not by the end of the actual year. I think we'll know the direction that they're leaning by the time the next basketball season comes to a close, because when you got a leaking roof, that kind of pushes your buttons to kind of get something resolved. And so I think Carolina will have an answer sometime here in the near future.
Yeah, it definitely feels like you're getting to that point. And, there really are, a lot of options that Carolina has. There are 4 that are considered on-campus options, and then you've got the 2 that are considered satellite options. And so, there's a lot of push for them to stick with an on-campus option, but I do think that there are a lot of people that really like the off-campus solution as well, because one of the things when talked about the Smith Center rebuilding in that area or renovating that area, Lee Roberts said, quote, "I think the bigger issue is that there really is nowhere to build any amenities around the Smith Center, and the hospital is going to need to expand over time." That's something that we've heard from a lot of people around the program, is that the hospital is going to need to expand at some point. That means that it would take over some of the areas near the Smith Center, and, the Smith Center itself would have to, either build, parking or something like that in a different location in order to serve the amenities of the hospital growth. So I do think that that's why they probably are looking very hard at moving it to another location. I do think that is probably the most likely thing at this point that is going to end up happening based off of some of the other stuff that I was reading here. But I mean, yeah, to me, I think it's going to be hard for a lot of fans to really deal with the fact that the Smith Center is probably going to be, I don't think it's still going to be standing. I don't think they're going to keep it there, even though we would love for it to stay there and for it to be like some of the other spots, Woolen Gymnasium, Carmichael Arena, spots that you can go to and see part of the history of Carolina basketball. I just don't know if the Smith Center is going to be able to remain there. I think maybe in the current time period, that would certainly be something that would, it would still stand. But eventually, if they're going to expand the hospital, you wonder if that still stands. One of the other things that they've talked about, and this is, I think, what makes it interesting and why there probably are a lot of people that are also on the that are involved with this decision, that are also on the train of finding somewhere else for Carolina to play, whether it be on campus or off campus, is because of the fact that if Carolina is to decide that they do want to renovate the Smith Center or they want to rebuild the Smith Center, where exactly is Carolina going to play? They're going to have to find a new area for Carolina to play their basketball games. They played the game at Carmichael a few years ago, but the thing is now with, the women's basketball program playing all of their home games there, you've got, volleyball that plays their games there and stuff like that. I don't know if there's going to be enough time on the schedule to fit in all the home games that Carolina would need. Also, you would go from from where Carolina is at with the Smith Center in terms of capacity to cutting that into nearly a third when it comes to what fits inside of Carmichael Arena. So that's a significant difference. Carolina fans would have to pay a significant amount of money more than, you would in outside the Smith Center to be able to get into those games because of how small the location is, how sought after those tickets would be. So I think that's probably why, another reason why they are leaning towards building somewhere else. Carolina would remain in the Smith Center until that build is complete, and then eventually they would make the move there. It seems like that is probably more sustainable based off of what I'm reading than Carolina seeing the Smith Center renovated or seeing the Smith Center completely rebuilt.
Yeah, a couple things I'll piggyback off from there. When it comes to a potential tear down and demolition of the Smith Center, I think it's a lot easier to process and accept if it's for hospital expansion and they're not tearing down, the whether it's, we want to list it, the most sought after venue on campus or the second right up there behind the old well. It'd be a hard thing to see it be torn down for them to put a parking deck there. If they're doing expansion for hospital needs, I think that's a lot easier thing to accept, because as passionate as we are about Carolina basketball, the hospital plays a pivotal role on campus in that area just in general. And it's one of the, in the South, it's a hospital that's renowned for its cutting edge technology and just, the world-class doctors that they have. And if you're getting rid of a basketball arena to help save lives, I think that's something that we can all be somewhat in favor of, as opposed to them just putting, a parking deck. And then, with another thing, with the potential teardown of this, how many programs can say that they've got a Carmichael and a Woolen Gymnasium that are still accessible? Like, Carolina's been very spoiled in the fact that they've got two other historic venues that house championship programs, championship teams, that you can walk in and see and be a part of and see that history come to life. I'm not saying that it makes it any easier, but it's just a reminder of just how good we got it, folks. Like, I mean, maybe outside of maybe Kansas, Kentucky doesn't have that. Duke doesn't have that. Indiana doesn't have that. They have a facility. We've had two other previous facilities that we can still, we've gone inside Woolen Gymnasium. We've walked up the Carmichael Auditorium. And that's a unique part of being a Carolina basketball fan. And I think they would put the tradition of the Smith Center in a new building. And I do think trying to figure out where to play your home games while you're maybe rebuilding or renovating your current arena is a lot more difficult than you think, just when you think about the fact that, you can't just go to Greensboro whenever you want to. Like, in the old days, maybe you could have, because Greensboro wasn't hosting the amount of, events that they're hosting there on a night in, night out basis. But it's more than just basketball games that get played there now. You can't share an arena with State because of what all the Lenovo Center has to, put on with State events. They're the home to the Carolina Hurricanes. And then all the various concert and events that they hold, they hold on. And so that is probably something that's also going to tip the scales in the favor too, where logistically it'd be really hard for Carolina to find somewhere else to play their home dates, where you're talking about at least 2 years to build a brand new facility. And that's if everything goes well and that goes on time. I worked at construction. That does not happen. Nothing just about ever runs on time. And so you maybe have to bank in 3 years to maybe find somewhere to play your home games while they're building a facility. Might be easier to just keep the Smith Center open until your new arena is completely furnished. So I think that's what makes this conversation just so interesting, because it's not just one or two things that they have to take into consideration. It's a lot of things that you got to take into consideration now when you're building a new arena. How are you going to funnel students in and out? How are you going to get the general public in and out? Entertainment districts are a big part of when you see facilities being built. You can't build an entertainment district where the Smith Center currently is. Guess what? You can do that at the Carolina North project. And so, I think it's just one thing that's going to really make this all the more, I think, fun to kind of be a part of, because no matter what happens, whenever this is all said and done and it's finalized, Carolina is going to overhaul their basketball facility and their basketball game day experience in more ways than one. And I think that's something to be excited about as a Carolina basketball fan.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to be excited about because it's going to give you a new home. It's going to allow you to keep up with, some of the demands of what college sports is now. I mean, new facilities are a big part of the success in recruiting. Even still, I know that right now during the NIL era, it seems like that's really the biggest thing that people are worried about. But, this is going to allow Carolina to bring in more money to the university, but with some of the stuff that they would be able to build around the facility. So I definitely think that's certainly something that, probably points you towards Carolina building a new facility. One other thing that I think points towards you building a new facility, and this was something else that was brought up with Lee Roberts, is the fact that, right now Carolina has more than 5,000 private seat locations that remain from the Smith Center's original fundraising campaign in the 1980s. That, according to sources for Inside Carolina, a new arena that will reset a lot of those to where there are some people that would still hold those licenses. I mean, maybe there were agreements that were made where even if they moved to a new facility, they would hold on to them. But most of those, they were not. And so this means that it would open the door for increased revenue streams with the updated licensing structure in the years ahead. And it would allow for, you to sort of determine what you want to do. Do you want to put students closer to the floor? You want to surround the entire court with students? I think that is another thing that really is interesting when it comes to the renovation of the facilities, is that all that stuff, all those seats that have been held by some of the older fans here over the years would be relinquished, and it would allow for Carolina to be a little bit more creative, build a stronger environment in the Smith Center, something that is certainly being looked at by the administration, is being looked at by donors, and I think probably pushes them towards a different location for the Smith Center because even with, the Smith Center, it's whether it's renovated or whether they rebuild where the Smith Center is at, those private seat locations would remain if you went with one of those two options.
And let's sit here and let's be honest. Carolina needs to revamp its game day atmosphere inside the Dean Dome. The wine and cheese moniker is 30-something years old, but it's still applicable to where to this day. I mean, outside of the Duke game and the one or two big, whether it's a non-con game or the other maybe big ACC game, Carolina's got a sleepy environment. It deserves a better environment for what we believe is the best program in college basketball. The best way to do that is to get the students closer to the action, let them be a part of the action. And look, it's great that those people in the 1980s got those seats and they were a big part of funding the project. But guess what? That was 40-something years ago. These people aren't young, rabid Carolina basketball fans anymore. Like they're a lot more older now, and they're not wanting to sit there and stand and cheer and yell and scream for 2.5 hours while at a college basketball game. So in the long run, that hurts Carolina's environment, and that makes it easier for teams to come into your building and win, which is not something that anyone likes seeing, let alone someone like me that values winning on the home floor. And so that might be, to me, the biggest upside to building a brand new arena is that it gives Carolina a real chance to revamp the in-arena game day atmosphere, which is something that really for my entire life as a Carolina basketball fan, you're going on 15 plus years now, I have said could be better. And the best way to do it is to get rid of the people that bought the seats closer to the action, no longer want to cheer like they did when they bought those seats in the 1980s. And I think that's something that could be exciting because you look around with the way that when Auburn when they built Neville Arena and what they did with their atmosphere, it's one of the toughest places in the country to go win a college basketball game. And they just started caring about basketball 5 years ago. There's not a world where Auburn should have a better in-game atmosphere than Carolina has. But that's the truth outside of the Duke game. A new arena allows Carolina to get right up there in terms of having the best home court advantages in all of college basketball.
Yeah, I think it certainly does. And I think the fact of the matter is that in order for you to continue to be one of the best teams in college basketball, you need to have a home court advantage that really stands out. And I think, look, the Smith Center has its environments where it really does impact the game. I mean, especially the Duke game, NC State, those are games where the Smith Center is typically packed, where 21,750 people will pack themselves inside the Smith Center. And it turns into one of the best environments in the sport, even with the fact that you have the dome ceiling, which doesn't hold in the sound nearly as well. With this new place, you can, lower the capacity to a 1,600 seat capacity venue. This is certainly something that I think is very polarizing with a lot of fans. But I will tell you that 60% of the donors that were surveyed in the donor survey that was done here about the Smith Center here recently and about what the option should be, 60% of them said that they agree with reducing the capacity of the Smith Center and making this a smaller venue to create a stronger home court advantage. I think that certainly is something that is going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of fans, but is necessary to have happen in order to create that better home court environment. And the other thing is that, I know a lot of people will probably want the dome as part of the new location. They're hoping that you can still call it the Dean Dome, that it'll still be named after Dean Smith. I don't know if it is going to still be named after Dean Smith, but I think we can come to the conclusion here that we believe that the dome element of the building is not going to travel to whatever new location Carolina has, if that's the direction that they go in. I got to be honest with you, I don't even know if they rebuild on the Smith Center site that they will keep the dome element to the building. I just don't know if that's going to happen, because I think they are trying to focus on a stronger home environment. It's also going to be much cheaper to not have to build the dome element on top of the building. So I think that was something that was done back during the 80s when the Smith Center was built. That was something that was iconic. A lot of programs that were building arenas during that time wanted that dome element. Now that's not really what you see in a lot of these arenas that are built. So I would be shocked if that follows Carolina along. I'm not sure what they do with the naming of the new arena. I would love for Dean Smith to still be involved in some form or fashion, but I do think that, it probably would move on to Roy Williams or something along those lines. Who knows? Maybe it's even just an arena that is licensed out because Carolina is trying to bring in more revenue, which I think would infuriate some people at the start. But when Carolina is competing at the highest level in terms of the money being brought in and in terms of the players being brought in, I think people would probably change their tune pretty quickly. But I do think that, we can come to the conclusion now that they are probably going to go with a smaller venue that will help the environment overall, whether it is, the on-campus sites or the off-campus sites that they have.
When they built the arena and they put over 21,000 seats, they wanted to make it accessible for virtually for every Carolina fan to get to at least one game a year, which was a great thought. And it really shows you that Dean Smith cared about the fan base that he had basically cultivated with all the winning that the program was doing. You don't need to have 21,000 people in your stands to have a great environment. Kansas has the best home court environment in college basketball. They seat 16,000 people. 16,000 should be the maximum. You want to cut this thing down to 12, 14,000, I would not complain. Smaller is better, I think, in college basketball. Although I know that's going to drive up ticket prices, but that's just the cost of doing business. And look, the dome aspect, from the moment that this became a discussion, you knew that was always going to be the first thing to go, just because Logistically, it just does not make any sense because it doesn't. It really is a testament to how good the environment is for the Duke game, and we've got to experience how loud that is. But could you imagine how loud that was if there wasn't the open air at the top of the arena that there is for all that sound to go to? If that noise was compacted and it was closed in at a much better rate than what it is right now, I mean, you would probably go deaf going to the Duke game. That's how loud it would be. And so that to me is, again, a necessary thing. As for the naming, I think that's the one where you want to build a new arena, you want to usher in all this new, that's fine. You cannot not name it and have it tied into your two legendary coaches. You just can't. You want to add, and look, I know that we're all about making money, and that's a big part of it. But that's where you're going to have the business suites and the things that you don't have access to right now. You'll have access to that. Oh, by the way, jersey patch sponsors, they're coming to college athletics as soon as next year. Carolina, I'd much rather see a Verizon logo on the front of my jersey than my building be named after some business. I do think with all the new and all the change, no, you got to keep the building named after your legendary people. So I would just rename it, the Dean E. Smith Center, the floor to be named after Roy Williams, and you go about trying to get, licensing and funding in other ways. I do think Carolina fans would push back on it being if the arena had naming rights. I do think that is something that you would push back on, because look at all the other historic venues in the sport: Cameron Indoor Stadium, Allen Fieldhouse, Assembly Hall. You got Rupp Arena. Those are places that are not going to sell their naming rights anytime soon. Carolina needs to stay in that fabric. So, but I do think from the moment that this became a discussion, smaller venue, no dome, was always going to be an inevitable. It's just now a matter of Carolina trying to find the magic number for what that capacity should be. I'm fine with it being 1,600 or 16,000. If you want to go down to 12,500, you'd have no complaints from me.
Yeah, I think most of the plans that they have are right at 1,600. I'm assuming that they have done the research. That's the number that they want to get to. And I think that's certainly something that Carolina fans should be on board with. I know the ticket prices are going to go up, but, there was something that was brought up, in the article with Lee Roberts that, the Smith Center doesn't always necessarily fill up for most of the other games besides the game against Duke and the game against NC State. There are a couple other ones that throughout the year, maybe Carolina will end up filling those. But for the most part, it's typically, there's a decent amount of seats that are empty. Actually, most donors, that was the part of the article that it was in. Most donors noted that the Smith Center's capacity of 21,750 seats produces only a select number of games each season that completely fill it up. So that shows you right there that even the donors have noticed that, all those seats not necessarily filled for some of these games. If you go to 16,000, there's a much better chance that you're going to be able to fill those seats for a lot of those games. And you would believe that would create more consistent environments for Carolina, because that's the one thing that you can admit. Carolina's got a pretty great environment for the Duke game. They've got a pretty great environment for NC State. Last year when they hosted Alabama, those are the types of games where the fan base shows out. But there are other games, some of the weekend games in conference play that are early in the afternoon, stuff like that, where there might be, 15, 16,000 people that are in the arena, but there are still empty seats. This would prevent that from happening moving forward. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to complain wherever Carolina wants to go with that. Getting down to 12,000, I think then you're wondering just how much money it's going to cost to go to a game at the Smith Center. I am someone that, I want to have my ticket be affordable when it comes to going to games. I think that's important. I think that's something that's an element of the Carolina basketball that you should still want to keep, because, you look at your rival, they have the smallest environment, I think, in the sport, at least for major conference teams. And, their environment, while it may be great, it's incredibly expensive to go to games. I mean, I know Duke fans that have lived here that have gone to certain events for the program, but have never been able to get into actual games because they just say, the ticket price is way too expensive. I think you should still want to be affordable if you're Carolina for your fan base, but you do want to create a better environment. So that makes sense. I'm with you as well. I think the pushback to having a licensed sponsor for the arena, I think is probably a little bit too much in terms of naming. I think you would be fine if they want to put logos on the court and stuff like that. You talked about, the patches on the jersey. That's a way that you're going to be able to bring in some stuff. I do think that, you are still going to be able to generate revenue. And that's a big part of the reason why, bringing in Steve Newmark makes a lot of sense as an athletic director. He's going to be able to find those creative ways to be able to market the program. I think one that you want to avoid is those naming rights to the arena. Because as you mentioned, you look at the great venues around the sport at some of the best places in the country to go to, some of the best basketball havens that are out there. They are not in commercially licensed arenas. They are in arenas that are named after legends. I think for Carolina, I don't know if it is going to be the Dean Smith Center. Like I said, I do believe that the Smith Center, if they do end up moving to a new location, will still be on campus for the time being. Not sure how long it would take until the hospital expands and they would eventually have to knock it down. Or maybe they never have to do that and they just build around the area. But I think with that being the case, there's a good chance that the new arena would probably be named after Roy Williams. And so I think that would certainly be something that would be interesting. It would be, again, another polarizing aspect of this, because there would be certain fans who would disagree with that, who would think that it should be named and focused on Gene Smith still. But there would be some fans like us who are a little bit newer that would probably, I'm not going to say prefer that, but would get behind that as an option, something that, certainly we would be debating on this podcast here for a while. When it comes to some more of that, of the survey and what exactly came out of that, when it comes to the donors, 80% of the donors preferred for a new arena to be built on campus. The Odom Village spot is the one that is currently looked at as their top choice. No donor expressed preference towards the Smith Center replacement option, which would have built a new arena on that site. The Carolina North was deemed as the least preferred route, with just 5% of donors selecting that as their top choice. So it seems very clear that the donors, and you would imagine the fans, they want a new facility to be built on campus. But I don't know if that's the way that things are going to lean, because of what we'll talk about here in a minute, which is the revenue side of things when it comes to building these new locations.
Yeah, I mean, keeping everything on campus, I think from a donor perspective and from like a fan perspective, I do think that makes a lot more sense, just because it enhances campus lifestyle. It enhances the feeling around game day. It's one of the great things about where Kenan Stadium is when you go to Carolina football games. It's the fact that it's really not that far of a walk if you want to spend your entire pregame, pre-day festivities on Franklin Street. It's not. It doesn't take that much to get it over via walking to Kenan. And this is, including you and I, that walking is sometimes a hard task for us, depending on the day of the week. Whereas, like for basketball, where it is right now, it's the least ideal thing in the world, because it's the furthest, it's a mile and a half away from the South Building. It's just so far away from, from where Franklin is. They're really like, you spend your whole day there, but then you kind of got to hustle over to the arena. Whereas if you can bring it somewhere closer, and I'm not quite sure, just going off the top of my head, where the Odom Village is. I don't know where that is in location to Franklin Street, but I love the idea of keeping everything on campus. I hear them talk about Carolina North, and I know what the donors said. I heard what Bubba Cunningham said. We got the land. The land is going to be developed one way or another. And the downside to building on campus is you maybe cannot do as much around the arena as you can do if you build off campus. And I do think that's something that Carolina is going to be intrigued by, because, we're seeing it with what the Hornets are doing right here in Charlotte. Virtually every pro team, when they build a new arena, they are building an entertainment district around said arena, because it's just another way for them to generate money, generate profit. We've seen it with the Mets, the baseball team that we love and support. Mm-hmm. Their owner's about to build a whole entertainment district around Citi Field. I think that's something that gets Carolina's attention, is if we build somewhere off campus, we could build hotels and restaurants and a dining area and all that. And that's where everyone just goes to for the game. That's where you go for the pregame. That's where you go for the postgame. It'll maybe take away from Franklin Street, but they kind of got to weigh the good and the bad of doing that. And I think that's going to be the thing that's going to be what maybe drives this thing home more, is how much do they look at the potential revenue off campus? Does it outweigh the benefits of maybe building something on campus?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them as a group when they consider what they're going to do. I mean, the chancellor is going to be definitely looking at how much money you can bring in for the university. That's the same thing for Steve Newmark. He's going to be doing the same thing for the athletic department. What do you ultimately bring in? I'm looking at where this location is for Odom Village, and Odom Village, I think, is, a little bit closer to Franklin Street, but not by a significant amount. So I don't think it would necessarily, have any sort of advantage there. It's still going to be a pretty long walk from where you're at. It's still, behind the hospital and everything like that. It's still in that area of campus. So it is still going to be a pretty significant walk to get to Franklin Street. The thing is that just about all these, it's going to be a significant walk to get to Franklin Street. The Friday Center, that is one where it is so off campus that you would end up having to bus most people back to Franklin Street if you were to celebrate a win over Duke, win a national championship, something along those lines, where you do celebrate on Franklin Street. You would have to bus most of the people there, where, even though it is a little bit further, it's only about 8 minutes further in terms of a walk. Carolina North, where that's located off of 86, that is still an area that you can get to walking wise in a pretty timely manner. So I think that's probably, I would say this, and we'll get to the financial side of it here in just a second. I think in terms of location, the Friday Center is almost, I think there's almost a 0% chance that happens. That's an area where they're going to have to build, and they're going to have to build a bunch of parking. Now, they would have to do the same thing for Carolina North, but I think that, it still makes a lot more sense because of how vast that area is. The fact that they would be able to put a lot more amenities around it, that probably makes the most sense if it comes to an off-campus location. So, yeah, now let's get to the financial side of things and what exactly is the cost of all of these. So starting with the renovation of the Smith Center, clearly that would be the least expensive route, with the total project cost, according to Inside Carolina, being $576 million. This would be, it would be multiple improvements to the current arena, including renovating the Smith Center's current single concourse, expanding suite level seating along the south end of the arena, and then expanding the north end of the arena. An additional concourse and corner club level seating options would be added to that area. That's how they would end up renovating the Smith Center. That's also means that they're probably going to want to expand the Smith Center a little bit. Same thing if they end up demolishing and rebuilding the Smith Center, they are going to want to expand it. And there is the challenge of the other, stuff that is around the Smith Center that, would prevent Carolina from being able to expand it without having to knock down certain other buildings on campus. So I think that certainly is something that factors in to what Carolina wants to do in terms of that. In terms of the rebuild on the Smith Center site, that does carry a little bit more of a price tag. That would be around $767 million. The study that was done has concluded. The rebuilding of the Smith Center would have a similar timeline length as the off-season only renovation approach, with projections for both of those around 4 years to complete. The Tar Heels, as we said, would have to relocate games for 2 seasons during the rebuilding process. So that would be significant for Carolina. They would have to find a new location to be able to play their games. Maybe, the one option that we haven't talked about, and this one is really far from campus, but playing at the Greensboro Coliseum would be one that you would think of for Carolina, but that's still a significant drive from campus. Don't know how many people would be on board with that move. So, you hear those price tags for the Smith Center ideas, and what do you think about both of those?
Yeah, I think when you hear, what was the first number, $575,000
million.
Or $575 million, and then the second one was north of, was it 770? I think is where you were at.
Right about.
It's just why, unfortunately, if you're gonna have to spend and invest that much in either a renovation or a rebuild, to me, it's why I think it's going to tip the scales for them to just go somewhere else. When you're just looking at how much you're going to have to invest for either one of those two projects, and both of them have logistics concerns. As you mentioned, with whether you rebuild or renovate at the current Smith Center spot, because there's other buildings and structures around that, will you be able to do what you truly want to do, or will you be hindered by other facilities being nearby that'll maybe not be allow you to do what you want to do with the facility? And that's just getting into a lot of architectural stuff like that, but it is just a factor. And so I think, when we started talking about this, I guess it was about this time a year ago when the first report came out. I think you and I, and I know for myself, because I am definitely, much more of the old school, preserve the history type of person. It means so much. I was pretty steadfast, and you got to do whatever you got to do to keep the facility there. The more that we have learned, the more that they've researched, the more that they've surveyed, and with these numbers starting to come back, it's making more and more sense for them to go somewhere else to build their new basketball home. And they just got to figure out which number is one they can afford, and then makes the most sense for all parties involved.
Yeah, one of the challenges that they would have was, as I said, they would want to expand the Smith Center facility in terms of, adding more space in the concourse and everything like that. Probably having a new area where Carolina would be able to practice to keep up with the times and everything like that to get on the level of some of these other facilities out there. The Corey Natatorium, which is right next to the Smith Center, which is home to Carolina's swimming and diving teams, would probably have to be removed. The Smith Center would have to expand into that area. And so what ends up happening there is that as a result, there needs to be a new natatorium somewhere on campus. That means more money that has to be sunk into that. That means that that would have to be built before you could start any sort of renovation or demolishing of the Smith Center. And so, I mean, at that rate, it could take more years than just the 4 that we said was this survey sort of came to the conclusion on. So I think that probably makes those 2 options probably pretty unrealistic. I think that there are, a lot of fans that want to stick with that plan. Our guy, Greg Ward, who is, been watching with us on Facebook, he said that would be the plan that he would want, definitely to renovate. I don't see that happening. I find it highly unlikely. I think they will be moving to one of these new locations. And hopefully, I'm still a guy that thinks that they should be on campus, but there are, these options that are off campus as well that are getting a lot of run here. Let's look at the 2 on-campus options for Carolina. That would be the Bowles lot, which is Carolina basically just moving the Smith Center over to the parking area that is there. Now, the thing is that if you end up making that move, you need to make up for the parking that's going to be gone. So where does that parking probably end up going? Probably ends up going where the current Smith Center is. Of the 4 options that would result in a new building, the Bowles lot is the least expensive one. It is around $663 million, according to the sources that Inside Carolina has. And the completion timeline would be just shy of 5 years. While, it does say that the Bowles lot, of course, would allow Carolina's home basketball arena to stay on campus. The arena is limited in its opportunities for recreational and retail expansion. So that's going to be one of the things that's ultimately going to hold this plan back, is that in terms of wanting to create a sort of game day environment around the facility, creating some of those retail opportunities that they're wanting to have, it's pretty limited in that area because it's keeping it basically in the same spot where the Smith Center is. And it seems like that is a growing thing that is wanted by this administration, as well as some of the donors on campus. The Odom Village is the other on-campus option for Carolina, which is, if you don't know, located near the intersection of Hibbard and Williams Blythe Drive, which is behind the current medical campus for Carolina. The project looks like it would cost around $719 million. It would still have the same 5-year timeline for completion that you would have for the Bowles lot. And look, the Odom Village still limited in terms of the area for retail expansion, but there would be some opportunity there, something that's a little bit different than what you would get at the Bowles lot. So there would be a little bit of that financial revenue that would be able to be brought in that area. I think that's certainly something that, should interest a lot of fans in terms of keeping the program on campus, but at the same time being able to help with the financial side of things as well. They do say that any recreational and mixed-use development would conflict with the 2019 campus master plan, though, which identified the area of Odom Village for academic use, along with research and ecological restoration. So that is certainly something that they would be battling with that location. But those are the 2 options to keep them on campus. I think those are probably the options that most fans are going to want, but how realistic it is, not really sure.
Yeah, the Bowles lot does absolutely nothing for me, mainly because, if you build there, you're turning your former facility into a parking deck. And I think that's the thing. Unless it's for hospital use, that's the last thing I want to see the Smith Center be torn down for. is for parking. So I'm much more inclined to the Odom Village route, just because that means that the basketball arena, if it were to be demolished, it'd be for hospital expansion, as opposed to just for us to park our cars. And it does give you a little bit more of a way to have some recreational stuff around the arena, which I do think is going to be something that's going to be prioritized the most, because that's the name of the game right now. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but after Jerry Jones built the star for the Dallas Cowboys, virtually every single time a new arena has been built, this has been something that has come along with it. And I think it's not just at the pro game, it's going to be at the college game as well. So the Odom Village is the one on campus I'm the most inclined to. But, the more that we talk about this, the more we talk through this, I think an off-campus site becomes more and more like the reality for Carolina's new basketball home.
All right. And so when you look at the off-campus sites, you've got the Friday Center and Carolina North. The cheaper of the two options is going to be the Friday Center, which is estimated at around $784 million, according to Inside Carolina sources. This option would require the current Friday Center to be demolished, while the surrounding buildings would still remain in use. This would also require a 760-space parking deck that would cost around $45 million, but that is factored in to the amount of money that is currently being said for that project. And then there's Carolina North. Carolina North, easily the most expensive route to go, $950 million. It would include the construction of a massive parking deck. The parking deck would hold roughly 3,000 spots and is projected to cost around $180 million of that $950 million. The thing is that Carolina North, the plot is easily the largest of all the options as well, and offers the greatest opportunity for retail and recreational expansion, along with university growth and housing development. So that right there, I think, is what really interests a lot of the higher ups. That's what's going to interest Lee Roberts. And that's probably the reason why this is probably the most likely plan for Carolina. It's going to be the most expensive. We know that. But when it comes to building these new arenas, building these new stadiums, we've seen that typically the most expensive route is the way that a lot of people end up going.
Yeah, go big or go home, right? And we're ushering in just a new era of college athletics, right? With NIL becoming what it's become, with revenue sharing having made legal. You're going to want to go and make as much money as you can, so you can spend as much money as you can to buy the best players, pay the best coaches. Well, the best way to do that is to have as much money at your disposal. And so I also think it would just be another way that Carolina could show that it's evolved as a university, as an entity, outside of just what they are doing as an athletic department, because this would become, for basketball games, this would become the place to be. But could you put a top of the hill in an entertainment district? Could you have a second Johnny's T-shirt, or some of those stores that make Franklin Street iconic? Could they, because of all the traffic that would be over there, could they have a second store open for basketball events, and then all the concerts that'll make its way into Chapel Hill, and all the other just different events that Carolina can't host right now that this facility would allow it to host? And this has been the one that I think from the very beginning we identified as the one that was the most logical sense, the one that made the most sense because of just all the land that's at your disposal, what all it offers you in terms of parking and housing and restaurants and stores and all that. And while it's the most expensive, I do think, it would show just a commitment from Carolina that, hey, we're not going to be afraid to spend. We want to be top of the line. We want to be the premier place in college basketball for you to come play. No other arena would have to offer what Carolina would have to offer in terms of the entertainment district that would house the basketball facility. So it's one that I have become the most intrigued by, the most open to, and I think when it's all said and done, whenever this comes to a vote and they vote on it, that'll be the future home of where Carolina plays basketball for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's confusing because I think the administration certainly wants that to be the spot where it goes. But I think the donors and a lot of the fan base, if you survey them again, would tell you that that is not where they ultimately want it to go. The donors are going to be important. I think that is why, if you look at it, there is still a chance that it could be one of the on-campus locations. And to me, that should be the preferred option, is that it is still on campus. You want it to be a part of campus life. You want students to be able to get to the Smith Center in a timely manner. You want it to be something that, is really a staple of campus. And I think that is why I would prefer, out of the options, the Odom Village route. I think that would be the one that I prefer the most. I still think you're putting a decent amount of money into the project that shows that you are serious about, a new arena and everything for the Tar Heels. But at the same time, it still keeps it centrally on campus. It's still something that, would create great environments because there would be plenty of students that would be able to reach it. The thing I wonder with Carolina North, and they would have to have transportation that would bring students to the games. They have said that that is a part of it. Is that something that you ultimately want to do, is to have to bus in students, or is it easier to bus in portions of the fan base like they currently do right now? I think it's easier to bus in portions of the fan base. The Friday Center is likely going to remain, so that is still a lot that a lot of people park at to go to the games. So I still think you would have that. You'd have the lot that you park at off of, I'm forgetting, right off of 54 now, the one that we normally park in when we go up there, the Southern Village. That's an option that would still be available. And then you could even bring back some of the other locations. The Airport Road location was one that was open for a while. They do have the Franklin Street pickups as well that they do. I think that would just make the most sense in terms of creating the best environment for Carolina basketball. But I do believe that if they go with the Carolina North way, I do think that still is something that is sustainable. For us as fans, I do think that that's probably the most attractive option because it is going to get us to the interstate faster. It's still within walking distance of Franklin Street if you want to be able to go down there. I mean, look, we haven't done the walk from all the way there. That's definitely a significant walk, multiple hills that you're going to have to go up. That would be certainly a challenge unless you are in really good shape. But I do believe that that is certainly something that they are strongly considering. And the biggest thing there is, we talked about it, not only the retail stuff. I think that would be important. They want to build sort of an environment around the arena, make it more of a game day central location where you can go and eat, you can go and drink after the game and everything like that. You can go and shop, all that kind of stuff in one area instead of having to go to different areas, having to go back to Franklin Street to be able to do all that stuff. The most important thing is it's also going to expand the university itself. And I think that is certainly something that they want to do. They want to expand the housing and stuff like that. That area would allow them to do that. So what do I want to see happen? I want to see Odom Village, but what do I think happens? I do think that Carolina North is ultimately going to be the way that they go. Any other thoughts on the Smith Center, the options that we have for the new arena or for the Smith Center renovation or anything like that?
No, we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. Just want to thank really the folks over at Inside Carolina for all the hard work, all the great reporting, making this stuff accessible to fans that gave us an hour-long podcast to talk about at the end of September. Not many other schools would have such an interest in an arena, but this is another thing that makes Carolina unique, special, different. because they know there are people that are passionate about this discussion, and it's why we've got the live audience we have with us right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And then, of course, those of them that'll catch us on the audio portion. So I just want to tip my hat to them because they did a fantastic job. And the next time we get an update, we'll be back on here talking about that. We've made it known what we want, how we feel about what we want. But unfortunately, we are not in the financial position to have any say whatsoever in terms of what happens. Regardless, wherever Carolina is playing its basketball games in the future, we can't wait to be there, a part of it. We can't wait to be covering where the Heels will be playing basketball. Probably by the beginning of the 2030s, probably by 2032, probably at the latest, I think Carolina will have a new basketball home. And I think that is something to be excited about as a Carolina basketball fan. With that, guys, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website that's HeelToughBlog.com, where it was a busy week for Carolina football despite being on a bye. 2 more players have left the program. Anthony has you covered on that front. We'll be getting back into game mode next week with Carolina hosting Clemson at noon. So be on the lookout for all the great Clemson coverage. And with that being an ACC game, there will be an injury report that will be made available. And there'll be an article detailing how healthy Carolina is or isn't going into that contest. As for the basketball stuff, we're just right around the corner from the basketball content really starting to flood the site and it becoming full throttle for both football and basketball. So we just encourage you to go to the website every single day. That's HeelToughBlog.com for the latest and best coverage of Carolina basketball and Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. If you're an audio consumer, just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the offseason, but basically the preseason content that is now going to start coming your way beginning next week. If you're a visual consumer, the best way to find us is to like and follow us on Facebook and on YouTube at Heel Tough Blog. If you like those pages, you'll be notified the second that we go live. If you follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh, you'll get notified as well when I'm live with any episode. And we have now moved basketball, just like football. Every edition of the podcast will be on video. We've been migrating towards that. It's now full go. Every time we're talking Carolina basketball, we'll be on video. So make sure you like those pages so you can watch us if you want to look at the 2 guys that don't have a lot of hair talking about the Heels. That is going to wrap up, though, this edition of the podcast. I want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.